An astonishing new report has found that tens of thousands of Channel migrants arriving in Britain escape full police checks, and they're not even questioned by officials on British soil. Now, incredibly, just 1 in 15 illegal immigrants are questioned about their links with smugglers, and worse, these interviews are entirely voluntary. This isn't April Fool's Day. Let's bring in now the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, and the former Director General of the UK Border Force, Tony Smith. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Tony, I'm going to start with you, because you read this report in full. You went through the highlights with me outside. I almost fell off my chair. Tell our viewers.
It's very worrying indeed, Martin, very worrying. I mean, more so probably for me, because I'd spent a lot of my time in border security, and I did all the border security for the Olympics, London 2012. It's really, really important that anybody coming to this country, one means or another, is thoroughly screened. Now, we already know the migrant boats are turning up undocumented, so we don't know who they are, but there's a huge pressure here on getting them through the Manston process really, really quickly. It's a short-term holding facility, which means we can't keep them for more than 24 hours. If we do that, we'll get sued.
Sued?
We'll get sued for unlawful detention. So the real pressure at Manston on the troops there is to get them moved off the boats through Manston.
Hang on. So people come here illegally, and we can only contain them for 24 hours, and then they have the legal power to sue the state.
If you hold them for more than the period allowed under the regulation, you are then liable. And the Home Office got into trouble with this a couple of years ago, right, because there was reports written about it when we had vast numbers come in, and it was a real pressure to get them through. So what's happened is the process has been established through Western Jetfoil and Manston to get them through within 24 hours. Ergo, you haven't got time to interview all of them, to thoroughly screen them and investigate them. There are lots of things that are not being done that might be done later on by the enforcement teams once they're already in, and I'm really, really worried that we're not using
into the country.
Yes. Now, what we should be doing, Martin, this is something that I always advocated. They should be detained on arrival, first and foremost, in a proper. So we could put a detention holding facility at Manston. The Home Office own it. We could have a detention facility there, 5-day short term or even longer, and we keep them there until we've done a thorough investigation. We've analysed everything. There's some fantastic technology out there now. Deep dive risk analytical tools that we could use whilst we have them in our clutches, so we could go back to them to put things to them. And the other really big point is we're not making a really good use of this facial recognition technology. Yeah. We're not actually capturing the images, but we're not checking them against the police national database. There are 6.2 billion photographs on our own police. These aren't just criminal. These are people that have been found in scenes of crime. These are people that have been found going through custody suites. There may be, well, a lot of those people that have been here before, that have been through our system, and we're not using the capabilities that we have because we simply are pushing people through, and it's really, really frightening. And I think we really need to look at it very, very carefully now that it's been brought to light, and make sure that there's a thorough review. Everybody coming into this country, particularly undocumented migrants, should be thoroughly screened and checked before we even think about giving them temporary admission. And I'm afraid that's not happening, clearly, from this report.
I'm absolutely staggered. Chris Philp, Shadow Home Secretary, on what planet can it be a sensible idea that we're fast-tracking illegal immigrants into our country, and if we don't, they can sue us?
Yeah, I think it's outrageous. They should all be checked thoroughly for criminal records, for previous associations, interviewed to get information about people smugglers. But the most important thing is they should not be allowed to stay here. Now, the Rwanda plan that Catherine touched on earlier would have seen them being rapidly and without legal challenge and without any of this sort of lawyers getting involved, sent straight to Rwanda, and then they would be processed by the Rwandan government over there. And all of the arrivals would have received that treatment, unlike these return hubs where only people who a year later lose their asylum claims. This return hub thing is not going to work. Now, the Rwanda scheme would have worked. Every single one of these illegal immigrants would have got sent to Rwanda. And we know from the Australian experience about 10 years ago that pretty quickly, within a month or two, people just stopped crossing. Why would you cross from France to the UK if you're going to wind up in Rwanda? It was a catastrophic mistake by Keir Starmer to cancel that Rwanda scheme before it even started. I suspect he is privately regretting it. So I've got one simple thing to say to Keir Starmer: bring back Rwanda.
He probably won't do that because it was a Conservative idea. But Tony Smith, if we can just put politics to one side for one moment and actually do what's best for the country, do you think that is the right thing to do? Bring back something like Rwanda, if not Rwanda itself?
Look, Martin, we've spoken about that. You don't join the border force to pick people up at sea and process them into the country quickly. That's not what they want to do. You know, I speak on behalf of the officers, not formally, but I know them well, and they really, really want to have a removals deterrent. They expect to be able to arrest somebody who hasn't got the right papers and send them back somewhere. The problem we've got, as Chris says, is that we can't send them back to France, and they've abolished the Rwanda plan, which for me was the boldest attempt I've seen anywhere in the world since sovereign borders to try and get people. And they had a huge fight with the Lords and with Strasbourg and everywhere else trying to block that, and we were nearly there. And I just feel if we could have just got a few flights away, I would have loved to have seen the messages running around Calais and Dunkirk. We had evidence of some going over to Ireland at the time, even before it came on. So I think it was a basic error for national border security immigration policy to abolish Rwanda, having gone that far.
Catherine Forster, bringing you back in now. The electorate just look at this and they're just aghast at what seems like absolute ineptitude. It seems like clown world.
Yeah, and of course we had the Conservatives pledging to get net migration down to the tens of thousands for years and years and years, pledging to stop the boats. They did nothing of the sort. Labour have come in, they've traded one three-word slogan, stop the boats, for another, smash the gangs. I asked the Prime Minister back in Rome in September, where's your deterrent? And he said to me, well, the deterrent is smashing the gangs. I don't think it is, because you've got to remove the reasons why people are coming in. As we saw from Patrick Christie's, people think they're going to get treated better. Obviously, English is a factor.
Well,
some of them have family, and we don't have ID. I mean, that is a factor. You can disappear into the black economy without the checks you'd have elsewhere.
Tony Smith, if you ran a business like you run this country, you'd be fired. You'd be fired on day one of this nonsense. Do you think that anything is going to get better anytime soon if it carries on like this?
I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon, I'm afraid, Martin. I think people are rightfully worried about that. I think we saw that in the election results quite recently, where people are really fed up with immigration not being properly controlled. I think that's a clear message that they've got in the political arena. What are the government going to do about it is my big question. I want to know what they're going to do about this report, first and foremost. Now, they're going to say something about, we'll look at it, we'll review it, but there's some pretty hefty recommendations in here from the HMIC, which are hugely credible. They've spoken to the crime teams, they've spoken to the Border Security Command. They are, there are people there are levers that can be pulled. The proof of the pudding, are we going to, and at least make sure nobody gets in? And we're not here talking about murderers and rapists who came through Manston who weren't properly checked, Martin. That's the last thing anybody wants.
Final word to you, Chris Philp. You had a long time to sort this out, 14 years. Why would it be any different if the Conservatives got back into power?
Look, Martin, mistakes were made by the previous government, no question about that. But we did have that Rwanda scheme ready to go. As Tony said, the most radical solution anywhere in the world since the Australian Sovereign Borders Plan about 10 years ago. Starmer cancelled it. But look, we're under new leadership now. We want to bring back Rwanda. If Starmer won't do it, we certainly will. And we had votes in Parliament just this week where we have new plans. I'll give you just two examples. An annual binding vote in Parliament to cap migration at far, far lower levels. We just stop giving out visas when the limit is hit, and Labour voted against that. The second idea we put to a vote was repealing the Human Rights Act to end all this nonsense, like illegal immigrants suing our government hours after reaching the country.
You regret not doing all of this when you're in power?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Rwanda scheme, that was ready to go. The annual cap, we should have done it when we're in power. Let me be honest, yes, we should have done it. But we're under new leadership. I'm a new Shadow Home Secretary. We put it to a vote in Parliament this week. We voted for it. Labour voted against it. The other idea was repealing the Human Rights Act to end all these nonsensical human rights claims. We voted for it. Labour voted against it. We've developed a plan, and if we get the chance, we are going to implement that and stop this madness.
An excellent start to the show, if deeply concerned. And before you go away, the Home Office said this. Its new organised immigration crime domestic task force will respond to the report, while Labour's Border Security Commander Martin Hewitt said police forces across the UK are already very committed to this issue. And while immigration-related arrests and charges have increased, we know there is more to do. Chris Philp, Tony Smith, Catherine Forster, great start to the show. Thank you all very, very much indeed. Now,